Hello and welcome back to the Better Living Interest channel. Where we dive deep into stories, ideas, and strategies that help us all live more intentionally, more sustainable, and more impactful. I'm your host, Paul Pérez. Today I'm thrilled to sit down to interview Mr. Benathan Upshaw. He is a real estate developer, social impact leader, and a native of Buffalo with a fascinating journey from early real estate sales to closing hundreds of millions in affordable housing projects across New York City. Mr. Benathan Upshaw is the manager, co-founder of CB Emmanuel Realty LLC, and over his career, he has structured and closed over $500 million in development projects, especially servicing low to moderate income communities. We're being hosted today in his one of his buildings here in Buffalo, New York, a brand new development on the east side. And in today's conversation, we're going to dig into his early inspirations, path into real estate, the lessons and challenges of working at scale and affordable housing, his approach at balancing growth, mission, and community impact, emerging trends in housing and development, and advice for change makers, entrepreneurs like yourselves, and people who want to build for both profit and purpose and real estate development in their communities and beyond. And later, we're going to do a set of rapid fire set questions to get some fun personal insight. So, without further ado, Mr. Benathan Upshaw, welcome to the Better Living Interest channel.
And thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for allowing us inside your development project. I think that this is really dope that people get to now see what it feels like for a developer, especially a developer of color like yourself, who's been doing large deals for some time now, to go inside the properties and get to see what that is. So first, I would like to start at the beginning. You are a Buffalo native,
Yes, I am proud Buffalo native.
grew up in the east side of Buffalo, and went to Canisius College.
Yeah.
What first drew you to real estate as a young person?
There's a couple of moments. I think the most important probably was my own father. My father owned the house that we lived in, and he purchased the house next door. And when all of this was going on, it's funny to say this, it was well over 40 years ago. So 40 years ago, and you don't see it quite as much, is they had a lot of infomercials about buying real estate with no money down. And I started listening to those and seeing my father buy real estate. And those were the first times that it started to pique my interest. So when I was 16 years old, I was in high school at a high school here in Buffalo. I'm proud to say also all the schools I went to, I'm crazy. Most of them are closed now. Was Turner Carroll High School, east side of Buffalo. It's a Catholic school. And I just went crazy going into real estate. So I volunteered in real estate offices, which were brokerages. And I would go downtown to the city library and I would take out the whole real estate section, just 5 and 6 books every week. And I started to learn about the history of real estate and I began to appreciate it. What I mean by that is I fell in love with the subject matter so much that I learned about Olympic York, which is a huge Toronto investor. Back then it was. They're in business. They did Canary Wharf in London, JMB Realty, Trammell Crow, Russell Development, who at the time was the largest Black developer in the country. And they're still going on very strong. So it wasn't just that, oh, this is a hustle or this is a way that I can make money. This became a love affair. And from that, I actually went on to NYU, got a master's in real estate development there. But I'd never looked at real estate as just a way to make a living or to make money. I've always viewed it as a way to do that, but also change communities. I also thought it was an excellent way to show people how real estate impacts all of our lives. When I used to talk to high school students, I was like, as long as people have weight and take up space, they're going to be impacted by real estate. The fact that you walk somewhere, you pay property taxes, you go into a movie theater, you have a license to be there. But you go home, that's a lease, or you own the home. To even get to the home, you have to pay property taxes. I'm like, what in your life is not impacted by real estate if you know the impacts of real estate? Even when you go shopping, there's a mall, there's a REIT that owns that mall, that leases it out to people that in turns sell you goods and services. You pay for those goods and services, they pay their rent, and then wealth is generated at institutional level up the chain. So I've always been fascinated by real estate, but it was probably my father.
Or your father coming And at the time in Buffalo, for our viewers that may not know Buffalo, what years would you say that was?
This is dating myself. When I got interested in real estate, it was the year was not, I can almost tell you almost virtually the day. It was the fall of 1982. It was the fall of 1982.
So in the 80s, Buffalo still had that manufacturing hub. It was booming with factories to an extent.
Yes and no. So the industrial base actually here at Buffalo started to slowly decline in the 70s. You still have plants like Trico and some of these other ones. They still have major employers in manufacturing. But what I started to see, because my parents were working in those factories, was that they'll get laid off a little bit more often. Work was not quite as steady as when in the 70s. Population started to die. And I think it was a slow skid from early 70s right to the 90s. And 90s, it just bottomed out. I remember my mother having to stop working in the factory and she was being retrained. She was working at Trico, retrained to do work that was more economy appropriate.
Yes. And then when you were doing this, I remember us having a conversation. You was talking about how you had approached some individuals here locally to help you gauge and get started. And those interactions help lead you to going into a different city to then go
Yeah,
into a different route. Could you elaborate on that?
yeah, I had some good, it's a little bit of everything, some good, some bad, something in the middle. The good thing is at the brokerage level back then in Buffalo, there were like four or five black brokerages. And that's a stark difference from what we have right now. But all of them said that I could come after school and observe. And then some of them were, once I started doing that, some of them were kind of like, you're in the way. You don't have a license. Those were somewhat good experience. I learned how to qualify people. So I knew how to qualify people for a mortgage when I was 17. Sit somebody down and do their ratios and stuff. So that was the first kind of thing. And what I started to see very quickly that was negative was number one, especially back then, is that a lot of real estate ownership and development was family oriented. Many families owned it and they raised the capital amongst folks in their own community, oftentimes, and they were doing incredible things and they were not going to impart significant amount of knowledge to you for you to learn that. Certain individuals said that I could work maintenance to learn about real estate development. And I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. So I didn't do that. And then other people, and I don't want to go into too many names, so other people, I interned with them. And every now and again, I would be exposed to some things that were very interesting. And I would take notes or copies of things and learn that way. But probably 70% of my time was regulated by a copy machine and getting copies and proposals out. And I had to have a conversation because I had my senior year at Canisius, I had to do a capstone project about real estate finance, and I couldn't write on anything because I didn't learn. I wasn't learning anything. Those experiences were mixed, but that also started to show me that I needed to get a formal education and I needed to possibly leave Buffalo because I started to see that the opportunities were very limited at that time for me. When I came back, they were a lot better. And just because I got an experience and knowledge, but to get that initial burst of experience and knowledge, I needed to leave. And there's no shortage of people that realize that they go to a big city, get incredible experience and education, and then they come back. And when you come back, then it's like I said, the world is at your feet, but you definitely can accomplish more because now people can't deny that some things versus not knowing and not being able to contribute to organization.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being transparent and speaking to that because for our viewers and those that are coming up, real estate emerging developers, etc., we're trying to figure out that information and we're going on channels, Better Living Interest, to research and get this information because in our communities, either they don't know it or the groups and the individuals that are doing the work, they're gatekeeping that information. And as you can see, it starts to negatively impact over time that community because now that information is not being transferred over. There's no succession planning. Then now you have no one else to blame but yourself. And I see that other marginalized communities of color, they support one another and they help one another at a tremendous.
That's it right there. That's my frustration and what I've been preaching a lot lately, the self-help, because I think the current political tide in America is really showing us and teaching us, if we're paying attention, about self-help, self-interest, and self-promotion. And I don't mean as individuals, but as a collective voice. I think, to put it bluntly, nobody's going to save us but us. And if we're looking for someone, the Calvary, to come in to save us, or to ask the government, or to ask philanthropic organizations, if they say no, then we have to keep going on, because it's just like if you have a family and you're going out looking for a job and one employer tells you, it's like, you got to keep going. So you get a yes. I'm like, if you won't hire me, then I got to keep going. And that's how we have to approach this. We are not going to be helped. And the older I get and the more I live and the more I see kind of political changes with the browning of America, rest assured, even though America is browning, those brown people don't all have the same interests, viewpoints, or needs. Right? It's like trying to talk about reparations to somebody from India that's a citizen here, or from Asia that's a citizen here now, or Cuba that's a citizen here now. That doesn't have nothing to do with me. You're going to take my tax money to do it? And that's going to cause strikes. At one time, it was in my naivety, I was like, wow, when the browning of America happens, things are a lot different. And the older I get, I'm thinking, I don't know. It may change based on how we get ourselves together, how we organize, and who we create coalitions around to change our communities. But I guess in short, it's going to take more collective effort and will on our own behalves to do some of these things, because, like I said, the cavalry's not coming. It's not coming.
And when you talk about the shortening and the inequities, one of the large statistics that stick out to me all the time is hearing that Blacks represent only 1% of the country's real estate development. And it's how you think about all this development, you think about all these buildings.
Yeah. Yeah. And the main reason is twofold. Actually, yeah, it's especially twofold. So when I was in school, I had this guy who was an incredible dean. He was a teacher. And he said, just remember three things. That if you're in real estate or whatever business bid you go in, you have to have expertise, you have to have capital, you have to have opportunity. If you have those three things, you got everything that you need. And in terms of, you look at the real estate development, it's an incredible amount of capital. That's a high barrier of entry. Unless your land, I was even talking with some small emerging developers yesterday, and they were talking about, I don't have $600,000. I don't have $1 million. That's like, most people in America don't. And that is like, in real estate development, that's like baby money to start nowadays. If you don't have $1 million, it's difficult. So it's a high barrier of entry, which is capital, and then expertise, because real estate development is a combination of law, architecture, construction, finance, property management. And you don't have to be well versed in all of them, but you have to be conversant and knowledgeable about all of those things. You have to be able to talk to a general contractor at 1 o'clock, a bank at 2 o'clock, an investor at 3 o'clock. And that's totally different than the conversation with the bank, government officials at 7. And all of those things require skills that have to be very unique and very good at what you do. So when you throw in the fact, high barrier to entry, throw in the fact that you have to be skilled in a number of disciplines, that equates to fewer opportunities for people of color. And we deal with that is education. How we deal with that is philanthropic dollars and public dollars to help folks get over those hurdles. And those are basic tools right now. And that's why it is the way it is. Now, even if you take people of color out of it and you say majority population, who's in it? If they're not in it either, like their checks, is what is it? When America gets sick, the Black community has death by pneumonia, because they're not in it either. They can't play in it either. But the thing is that it seems like it's doubly hard because of the way the game is set up and the way the game is rigged. And I think we were talking about this a little bit before off camera too. And the thing that I only see now that is starting to happen at the end of this century, if I am still, I'm alive, but at the end of this century,
No, you never know.
God willing, with the technology, you never know. You're right. But at the end of this century, if there was someone that has this recording and they'll say that guy was right at the end of the century, I do not believe that there will be significant private property ownership of land in this. I don't think so. Everything is becoming owned by corporate institutions, family offices. There was a time where Wall Street firms would not look at single family homes other than to give you a loan. And they're investing in single family home community.
Yeah.
So with their cost of capital, is that school teacher, is that mailman going to be able to buy a house? If you're competing against someone that has a cost of capital of 5% and you're going to the bank trying to get 7% money.
Yeah.
Because they can bid up the price on you and they're still making money. So in our field of affordable housing, I've never seen it become as corporately, institutionally funded as it is now. It's like they're buying stuff that I never thought people in this field would buy. So historically, just to give you an overview,
Yeah,
kind
please.
of history.
Please do.
Historically, in affordable housing, if you peel back, who did it? Our president's father was in affordable housing, right? But there
Trump,
was
you're referring to.
yes, President Trump. After a certain amount of time, a lot of folks would get into affordable housing, make their money, and then they would move on.
It was more like
It was an entry point. It was an entry point. You started there, then you went to market, then you went on to bigger deals. And what started to happen was that I would say non-VOSP developers became more prevalent within the field of affordable housing. And what I mean by that, people of color, people of Jewish descent, people that were Italian, more women became involved in affordable housing, either as commissioners or as high-ranking officials. And for lack of a better word, the WASP stayed on Wall Street. They were not selling their hands. They'll be either financing or becoming involved in affordable housing. And I would say over the last 7 to 12 years, that has drastically changed. So you go out to buy a development that has a Section 8 contract on it, and you could be bidding against one of the largest fund managers in the world now on stuff that they never gave a crap about. So what does that tell you? It was like, it's one of these things where you don't throw up the white flag, but you start to realize that I can't operate or I have to operate differently if I'm buying something that's 200 apartments. If it's 100 and below, that's not, their cost of capital at a time are not worth that. So you start to ball in that arena a little bit more. You start to look at things differently. You have to read what they say in business, you do a SWOT analysis, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And if you have limited capital and you're competing with people with endless capital and cheap money, and they want a certain thing, you try to find out what do they want and go in the opposite direction. And that's how you have to ball, because you can't compete with them head on. And what'll start to happen is if they don't know what they're doing, and that's what we're finding out too, is a lot of them are entering the space. They don't know what they're doing. It's okay, now you come back and you clean up their mess and you buy it again because that's what they would do to you, right?
Yeah.
So you start doing these types of things, but it's a very challenging time, realistic.
As you're speaking, I'm big into animals and earth, right? Because I feel that these animals have been on this planet for hundreds of thousands of millions of years. They have strategies and tactics that work and are proven, right? Survival of the fittest, it works for them. So I think of the sardine run in southern West Africa. So real quick, the sardine run, it happens, I believe, either once a year or twice a year, in which large massive quantities of sardines are literally swimming in the ocean in the southern western tip of continent Africa. Right? And you have birds that are diving into the ocean
to get the sardines.
to get the sardines. So I think of them as the small developer, people that are starting out in real estate. And then you have the dolphins. And what the dolphins do, they're bigger than the birds and they're smarter than the birds and they work as a collective. So they'll get a group of fish, they'll try to capture a school and they'll communicate to one another, as we know. They communicate to another and then they circle it, and then one jumps in. So they'll have three, and then one jumps in at a time, and then the next one is circling in, and then they jump in. So I feel like that's like the middle level real estate developers that are working together collectively, or investors working collectively to make that happen. And then to your point with these larger ones, there's the sharks. And the sharks come in and they just mess everything
They
up.
everything up.
Because they just come in and they're just brutal. They're like, I'm the biggest, I'm the baddest. And they just start eating as much as they can. And it throws everything to chaos.
There's a good point that you're mentioning. And it seems like whatever it is in life, it almost doesn't be in the middle for any. And when I say that, because when you're a small developer, they'll create programs to help. And if you're a big developer, you don't need help. But if you're in the middle, you just, and that's where our organization is. It's like some of these programs that are out for emerging developers or developers trying to scale line, we don't qualify for programs. And the programs that are financing, like those are too small for us to do. But we can't do those either. So it's like the biggest thing that I've learned, I think, over the last, call it 4 to 5 years. And it's like one of these intuitive things that you know this, but until you really see it affect your business, is the fact is, if you are not growing, you are dying. Because nothing in our world is staying in the same place. So if you still have the same amount of money on your balance sheet and the cost of goods and services are going up and you haven't grown that balance sheet, you've already started to erode. And what is starting to happen with a lot of developers now, some of them that are going under, is that you look at post-COVID and construction costs have gone up 30%. So to combat that, you looked and said, did your balance sheet grow 30%? Right. Why these costs are going up 30%? No. Did your NOI go up 30% after COVID because insurance went up 30%? No. So what is happening now is there, and it's always been like that. I've been a developer 20 years. And there's always a shakeout. It's always a shakeout. What is Warren Buffett used to say? You can see who's swimming naked when the tide goes out, who has balance sheet, who has reserves, who saw this coming, who didn't. And there are a lot of well-financed and healed developers now, both affordable and market rate, that the tide has gone out and that they've been swimming naked. Okay, how you going to deal with 30%? And nobody saw it. Nobody really saw that coming. I would have never thought insurance would go up post-COVID the way it has. And most people will tell you that insurance is killing real estate deals, not just in the Northeast. It's killing it in coastal areas. It's killing it in the Northeast. It's killing it in the Sun Belt. Well, it doesn't matter. It seems like everyone in the insurance business got together and said, time to get paid. Yeah. That's what it seems like. I was like, and I thought it was a Northeast thing, but it's not. It's not.
I know that they definitely try to make a correlation between climate change and natural disasters are starting to happen and occurring more in different areas, and thus, therefore, it costs more to rebuild, as you said, and then they have to balance that out.
That's the interesting thing, is that no matter where you're at, the numbers are going up to 30%. And what reason they give you depends on where you're at and what you're building. So what I mean by that is I talked to a developer. Yeah, all right, I'm by the coast, so we're going up because of the hurricane. And this property that we're in right now, they say this is a lower poverty area, so you have more incidents of crime. So we're going to charge you. I was like, that's not like redlining.
But they're not lending the insurance.
Yeah. So you are charging me more because of the population I'm serving and where they live. It's more risky. I said, for everybody? So yeah, you start to have these conversations and I'm like, this sounds like redlining. Just it's dressed up and presented differently. And I'm like, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. But they are doing, I am saying insurance is doing it for other beautiful places on the coast of Florida. Yeah, you got hurricane, you're in the hurricane. And you seem like you've expanded where the hurricane and flood zones are. It's all over. It's all over. So it's unfortunate. It's sad. I don't know what to do. I am not at that level, but a lot of organizations are saying that the federal government and state governments need to mandate and or regulate because it's gotten out of hand. It's gotten to the point where a lot of these buildings that historically have cash flow don't cash flow on it. And if you're a developer and you're owning a building just to pay everybody. It's like, well, why do that? And just take your money out and go and put it in a mutual fund or something. So a lot of these buildings are having a hard time cash flowing. So
That's good. That's interesting to know.
challenge. It's a challenge, right?
Yeah. And speaking of those challenges, considering your stage of development and where you once were and how you were able to build up, can you speak about where your work is right now from transactional versus community development and what lessons have stuck out early for you when you were doing this work? Because you had to make enough capital when you started off to build. And then as you're starting to build, you're building bigger projects. And you also have to be conscious of the community out.
I think what stands out now is how demanding the work really is and challenging it is. And if I had to go back, I would probably do a different type of development activity. I'd probably do more value add development than we're going to take that building, convert it to housing because the risks are different. So when we first got started, as much as I knew about real estate, I fell into some things that were very fortunate for us. So if we're doing in-place tenant rehab development, that doesn't require the same amount of liquidities if I want to build 10-story building because you have an existing asset that provides cash flow. So the liquidity requirement or balance sheet requirement to do that project is going to be a lot different. I didn't know that. I fell into that just by talking to bankers because we were doing these deals and I was like, we don't have the balance sheet, but we've saved money and the liquidity requirement wasn't terrible. I was like, we could have come up with some of it, even though this other person carried it for us. So what ended up happening is we had a joint venture relationship with a general contractor developer that basically flipped the balance sheet and we would do other deals on our own where we use our balance sheet, thereby leveraging and doing more deals, doing 2 or 3 deals instead of just doing one. Because we had our money, then we had his money on that 1 or 2 different deals. And doing that in hindsight is probably you have small liquidity requirements, doing in-place tenant rehab, and if it's done correctly, you can get a fee and you can also have a cash flowing asset. And sometimes that's a little bit more difficult when you're doing adaptive reuse because when you're doing your performer, if you have an existing building, it's easy to project out what you think it'll be operating at. I'm like, it's been operating for 40 years. You can project probably better what it'll be operating in 3 or 4. If you have a new building, you use comps, you talk to people, and you put together a performer. Sometimes those performers can be radically different. But trying to do it again. And I think that may be a better balance for us as entrepreneurs as well as being conscious of the community. One of the things that drove me into tenant in place rehab was when I was working in New York. And we went out to some of the buildings and you saw there was a child that was talking, that we were talking to the parent and the child came to run towards us and she fell through the floor, waist deep. And that kind of inspired me. It's great to take and repurpose a building, but you have so many buildings that are substandard living conditions. And like I said, it's less liquidity to do that. And you're impacting people's lives now versus building something that removes blight in 2 to 3 years, sometimes 4 to 5 in New York State. So that would have probably been more of my focus if I had to do it all again, because I think it's immediate impact, less liquidity requirements, and a different type of headache. Like the main issue that you're combating is when you start doing in-place tenant rehab and opening up worlds, you never know what you're going to find. So that is the dangerous part of it. But the new construction stuff is dangerous in terms of financially dangerous because you're talking more liquidity and bigger projects, more financial exposure, and more people you have to run through, especially in the bigger city or more. But the community board, government officials, more hurdles.
Real estate development is that crossroads, as Donahue people said. Macroeconomics and politics,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
come together.
Yeah. And the funny thing is you get all this formal education about real estate and then you have to apply it. And that's why people have doctorates, because they should know how to apply the knowledge that they have into the world to heal it and make it a better place. That's why it's a doctorate. And that's how it was explained to me. I don't have a doctorate. I got my doctorate in doing and getting out of. So no one is going to tell you How do you persuade a government official that your project is the right thing to do for a community, even if the community is blighted? Because sometimes you have to do it. Because some people will say, we need affordable housing, yeah. But that doesn't mean to be the one.
And that's the
And that's
politics
the
of it.
hurting. Yeah, that's the politics of it. I was like, well, what if it... So you have to make your case as to why you are the one that should be built. Especially in New York City or a place like New York City, Atlanta, LA. It's like, oh, the black developers, they're Hispanic developers. Why do you? Why should we? Which, man, you get into that kind of thing. So nobody tells you how to deal with that. Nobody's going to tell you how to deal with a labor strike. You'll take a course in conflict resolution. Nobody's going to teach you. And we started doing more of this lately. Nobody's going to teach you how to negotiate a project labor agreement with the union. Like, how do you... And that's something that will happen on a new construction project more than likely, or an adaptive reuse project. It's not going to happen if you have an existing building with tenants in it. But those are some deep and powerful things. And those are some headaches that, depending on where you are in the industry of business, what headaches do you want to try to tackle? Because whatever it is, it will be a headache. And then some of them are, as I get older, do I want to be arguing with people about labor agreements? And when they're saying that you're in the wrong, and your retort is, how many people of color are in your union? So it gets into those kind of things, because a lot of these unions, to be blunt, that have a history of hiring folks that look like me, folks that look like you. And then they come in and say they want... I'm like, why do you get X? Who are you? So you go back and forth and all those types of things. But those are the difficulties of being a developer. The good thing about being a developer is what you create makes an impact, and it changes people's lives for generations. That is, if you make a hamburger, you eat it, it's gone. But if you make a product and use it, but when you create buildings and communities, a lot of those things are still standing generations after you're gone. The fact that this building, I hope, will be here 50 to 60 years after I'm gone is something that I'm proud of. And it served a community where I grew up. I'm proud of that. And it provides housing for 3 or 4 generations. I'm proud of it.
Listen, yeah, I think, to your point, being an academic as well, my master's degree, you learn the practical things of what it should be like, and then you go out into the...
That's the first part.
And then it's
What
like,
should be like and what it really is like, a different thing.
but you've also been highly successful with your partners to hire teammates that can fulfill those challenges, or that either you don't want to handle, or that you're not too fond of, to help assist you with doing this work. Because it does take a strong team to do multiple.
It does. It does. It takes a strong team. It takes, even when we say strong, it's a very descriptive adjective. But the individuals, when we say strong team, they have to self-starters, experience, and they solve problems. I think one of the biggest things now, not only in real estate development or in the marketplace. So let me be clear. When we hire folks, and a lot of these people worked in, let's say, private sectors before they came to work for us. They have never worked for a developer. And the difference between working for a developer and working for a general contractor or an architect or a law firm, the biggest difference is developers, by the nature of the work that we're doing, are result-oriented people. So I don't have a patience or any affinity to somebody that just shows up and does work, because I'm like, anybody can do work. Did you produce something? And what do I mean by that? If somebody gives you an LOI to invest in your project and you're going back and forth, I don't come to talk about how many times you're going back and forth. I want to know, where is the money and will it be here next week? You have to produce that result within the time I've given you for you to be meaningful, and in such a way that it doesn't cost me money. And that is not most people's work experience. Most people's work experience is, you come in, you do 40, 60 hours, you get paid, you go home. And as long as you do that, and you're not disrupted and you show up on time, you're a good employee. Not for developers, you're not. If you don't produce anything, it's just, I'm not paid to try. I'm paid to produce. And if I don't produce, nobody's going to give me a pity party, because
Right.
you took that on as a developer. You took that on as an entrepreneur. You are paid to produce. And that is the biggest thing that I think people have to get adjusted to when they start working for us is we're like, okay, we've had a staff meeting. This has gone on for 2 weeks. Or issue is going on at the site for 2 weeks. I'm like, you're not paid to report back to us. He said, I'm like, if you don't know what to do to solve this problem, then I'm coming down to solve problems for you. Then what do I need you for? Because you're taking away time from me to grow my business. So it's totally different. And it takes a while for people to understand that you're not paid to just come in here and work. You are paid to fix problems. You are paid to avoid problems. You are paid to produce a product, because developers are paid to produce a product. Developer can work on a project 10 years and not get a dime, and there will be no pity party until the project is done, leased up, CFO, stabilized, tax credits and economic benefits delivered to investor, bank paid off, all those things hit. So all of that happens. Nobody gives a crap except you. And you got to make your employees give a crap. And I remember we were in one meeting and somebody said, maybe this won't happen now. Maybe we have to come back in 2 years. And I said, that doesn't work for me. Would you work on a job for 2 years? And somebody said, you know what? At the end of 2 years, we might pay. Who would do that? And that has to be, we have to reorientate their mindset. And that is, I think that's a valuable lesson for people that want to be developers too. Because if you're an entrepreneur, you understand that. But I think for developers, it's another burden, because we said it takes expertise and it takes capital. But the other thing about development is the time lapse. Unless you got a crew of people and you're flipping homes and you're doing it exponentially fast, there is a large amount of capital that is outlaid and you don't get that capital back maybe for years. And you got to be able to carry yourself. So a lot of property developers, also property managers, to help offset cash issues.
They're extension of you and the business, and that business got to make money to pay these expenses and these bills.
Yeah.
And if it's not calculating right,
The math ain't math.
math ain't math, then there's going to be another equation, and there's going to be a subtraction.
Dollars that don't make sense.
And it helps you build these projects. Speaking of the projects in which you've been able to do over $500 million worth, if not close to $1 billion now.
Yeah, with our new projects, new costs and things are going on. We're approaching, I would say, the next 3 years probably go. What took us in terms of cost, let's say 18, maybe 17, 18 years to do. That is going to be elapsed probably in the next 4 to 5 years, because where we're at now is the projects are bigger, they cost more, and we have more capital. So it'll start to be exponential. So what everybody, if you're a developer, you have to figure out how you play your game. If you're a basketball team, are you a fast breaking basketball team? Half court, a little bit of both. You go. So what our thing is now is to not allow staff, but to do bigger deals and do fewer deals than to do 6 and 7 deals and all of them. So you give up something, you have 6 or 7 deals, then you got to have a ton of people. Maybe you don't have a ton of people, but you might have to have more people. But what you get is, if it's a portfolio, you get diversification. If one project goes bad, those two go. So it's an economic trade-off. It's an opportunity cost. The figure where we're at is we would rather have 3 or 4 large deals and fewer staff than to have 7 to 10 deals and a big staff. And everybody's running around, but you get diversification. If you have a big deal and it's only 3 of them, that one big deal goes wrong, it could take you out. And it could take you out, in fact, the other ones. But if you have, then you're running around with your hair on fire. You're paying people. You have more headache. One deal is not going to take. So you make those, and then sometimes it's good to be somewhere in a little bit of both, somewhere in the middle. So for many years, we were in the middle. So we have a smaller staff we were doing somewhat large deals. A combination of in-place tenant rehab requires lower liquidity. Some like one or two big deals that require more liquidity. But it was like if you go out and start investing, it's I want some stocks, I want some bonds, I want some T-bills, and just blend all of that together. I'm happy with that because it's a good balance of risk, reward, time, effort. And that's how you have to look at your business as a developer or any business that you're in. You have to really balance it out like a portfolio. It's like, that's not going to burn me here. And I'm diversified because I got enough projects. For we would never take, you have to really be set up and really know what you're doing to take on in place tenant rehab and not have enough people to do. Like that is really people intense.
Yeah.
And if like we're doing new construction, it could be me and one person. Like it's gonna take a couple of years. We just go into meetings, we're underwriting. I don't need a staff of 10 people to do that. I'll do it myself and I'll have one other person that'll back me up when I'm not around. If I get sick or something, that person knows everything that's what's going on. And then we'll attack a project that. If you're case in point, we're working on a project in New York City with the housing authority and we're moving 600 families. Moving them, renovate and moving back. And we're doing that with another developer. So is that people that test? Heck yeah. It's like you got somebody that goes in there, interviews people, makes sure inventories what they have, coordinates when they're going, coordinates the work in their apartment, moves them out, moves them back, provides weekly minutes on what's happening, attends monthly meetings with tenant associations. Yeah, that's time and people intense. Versus, like I said, the new construction. I do that by myself. Time wise, it's not intense. It's just me and until everything gets figured out, it's me and one other person. It's not really, it's time intense. But you balance all of that stuff out because it has plus and minuses to it.
For sure. And the social aspect, I think I did take that in perspective, but that's property management.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're doing property management, there's a reason why not all real estate brokers do property management.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? It took me a long time to actually consider when I was doing development. I said it was property management, but it is a development in the sense that you are guaranteeing the loan. So when we do our in-place tenant rehab, we have the added advantage of being affiliated with a property manager. So my partner was a property manager. I don't want to say he still is because he owns a property management company. But by having a property manager there and paying them a little bit more to help interface with us, that's how we got started. So they had a portfolio of buildings that they were managed and they were all insured with HUD mortgages. And I was like, hey, you could do a 4% tax credit deal. And they're like, what's that? So we started going to his clients. So you haven't had capital improvements in 40 years, not significant ones. Mm-hmm. And the apartments looked like something, and this is in the early 2000s, the apartments would look like they were straight out of the 70s. Bunch. Partridge Family stuff.
The porcelain,
yeah, shag rug, and like we went into like lime green. I was so it's like, that's how we got started. So God bless us because we were fortunate because we had a portfolio of ready-made clients that we could practice our craft on and do 4%. I had made some connections with officials in city government. So we were winning RFPs. And then we started to diversify and say, that's what we're doing downstate. We can do upstate because I'm from upstate. So we start putting all it, and they're two different funding. So New York City has its own, and it can of affordable housing financing, and it can also tap into a state affordable housing financing. Upstate New York is just state pool money that you have to win. So it's like by doing that, we were in essence in two states. When you're downstate, it's so radically different than upstate, and you could deal with HFA in New York City. You want to deal with HPD and HDC, not competing with each other for those same state monies. So then we started doing 9s, do 4, we do some upstate, do some down. So in that way, what we hope is that you're always hitting on a project because you diversify your projects. You're geographically diverse, economically diverse.
Because you guys have started off doing the rehabs and then expanding and going back and forth from New York to 5 boroughs.
Yeah.
Coming up to Buffalo in between
Well,
Rochester.
we did basically Rochester and West. So we're in villages around Rochester. We're in Rochester. We're in Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and any suburbs. The weird thing about Syracuse is it's a 2 hour drive for me, 2.5. And I wasn't, I tried to do it and it was burning me. It's almost better for me to go be on a train or airport where I can work and then get off and then do what you got to do, work, get on another plane. But it was like that driving thing. I was like, it's 4 hours, 5 hours at a pop drive. It's not the end of the world, but it took up a lot of my time. If you want to do something bad enough, you can do it. And we are starting to relook at Syracuse, but Syracuse and Albany, Utica, ripped my bit those.
And you was also, when you was in the city and you had stuff and you went down there, you also had a background of working in government.
No, you'll never believe my background. My background is in education.
Okay.
I was working at my alma mater as an assistant director of HEOP.
I'm a Philadelphia.
A lot of EOP and HEOP people out there. I was an opportunity. I was at Canisius. I was a Martin Luther King Scholarship winner. So they had all of these opportunity programs under one umbrella. And I did that for 2 years. So I have never worked directly in government. The closest I got was New York City Housing Partnership, which is a government. It's really like a quasi governmental agency. It's like, you might as well think of it. It's the Chamber of Commerce for real estate activity. That's really what it was.
So is it a not for profit? It was a not for profit.
It was considered a non. Yeah, it's a non.
A not for profit that got some funding from the city government specifically allocated towards real estate
All
development.
right. So this is an interesting story. I said I wanted to hit all these points and be in and out, but I'm very passionate about what I'm about to say because we have to understand like the socio-economical climate and condition that creates opportunities and understanding how all of that happened to make us who we are. So that's what I'm saying a lot, but I'm gonna break this down and try to do this in 3 or 4 minutes to give you a flavor for what happened, what I did, and what can be learned from it.
For sure.
So what happened? There's an excellent documentary out called Decade of Fire. And in that decade, it deals with the burning of the Bronx, which are
Yankees in the playoffs.
the burning down. So in the 70s, and I was a child in the 70s, and I could remember some of this, but in the 70s, the price of gas and oil went up so drastically that people that own investment property in New York City, and in particular in the Bronx, but it also impacted Harlem, Brooklyn. It made more sense to burn your building out and get the insurance proceeds than to operate your building.
I've seen footage, aerial views,
and that's what the Decade of Fire is about. So they started burning, and they just started burning buildings out. Burn them out, get the insurance money, and whoever's left behind, you deal with the fallout. So this happened under Koch. This was under Koch. Actually, it began before Koch, but it was exacerbated under Koch. When Koch was mayor, after him was Dinkins and Giuliani. So under Dinkins and Giuliani, there were a number of programs and initiatives that took place to rebuild those. The city would end up owning the vacant land, and it needed to be developed because it was causing blight and encouraging crime. So what happened is it created programs to do that. So some very well-heeled developers start building buildings on their own, but they also carved out programs for small developers and emerging developers to participate and renovate and build buildings and or stabilize buildings. And that is the backstory of how I got started. I came in on that way that where Giuliani was on his second, I think it was his second. But you're talking about the early, this is actually the late 1990s, early 2000s. It was prior to 9/11, where all of these programs were going on and people were creating communities and also building wells from what happened socially and economically in the 70s. It was still going on. So that set the tone for us to who would give an African-American male like myself that didn't have a lot of money an opportunity to do a $3 or $4 million project. When I came out of NYU, I wanted to work on Wall Street so bad, but everybody kept pushing me to affordable housing. I was like, I don't want to do that. I said, I'm going to work on Wall Street, work for the REITs. I'm going to do all these fancy things. You could be in front of a computer sizing mortgages, or you can work with the city, New York City Housing Partnership, or a nonprofit. And they're like, you have a degree in real estate, you have a master's, and you look like us, sound like us, from the hood, like us. Here, manage 4,000 apartments, build 2,000. It was like an incredible executive experience. It was like I was 27 years old and you had a portfolio to manage a 4,000 apartment. Then we were building like 2,000 in Harlem in the early 2000s. So I was like, I guess I'm versus making people that are wealthy wealthier.
For sure.
Looking at hundreds of, and all what they were doing was my friends were working in commercial mortgage-backed securities from NYU. And it's all we do is size mortgages all day long and take them to committee. And they were getting an insane amount of money to do it. Back then, they were getting like 125, 150,000. This is 30 years. Big money to do it. But
That's nature. Because as a kid growing up in the South Bronx, Third Ave was empty. There was certain places, My Haven, Lincoln Hospital, all of that history, family from Harlem, etc. You would grow up and you would see brownstones that were vacant. And then it slowly started to change up. And fast forward now, 30 years later, you're seeing freaking brand new buildings. And what was it? South Row is what they're calling it now, the South Bronx, off the Cross Bronx Express, with rooftop pools now. And it's like all of that generational wealth, all of that money.
I even said, so when I worked in Harlem, my catchment was really Frederick Douglass and anything from the Apollo all the way up to the Polo Ground. Frederick Douglass.
So 125th, 150th.
Right, up there where the Rucker is at. Rucker's Place. It was up there. So anything in there was like ours. And Abyssinia was a development organization. They did stuff further west.
So he was on the east side.
They did stuff more on the east side, and we did stuff more on the west side. But they could play anywhere that they want. But anyway, that was an incredible opportunity for me.
Yeah, we're talking about how you guys were able to start up and develop in the crossroads of government and how it wasn't non-for-profit.
So that non-for-profit they had negotiated something. This is where I got to them. They had negotiated something that it was under Dinkins. A group of ministers had negotiated this agreement, and they had written it into the renewal plan for the area that if you wanted to develop anything in the area, they had to be a part of it. I don't know how they did it. I can't remember the exact wording of it. So if you wanted to, and you think about it, I think it's still there. It's a huge Pathmart on 145th at Frederick Douglass. There was just tons of condos, like anything in the area. If you wanted to do it, we had it. And that was brilliant. It's okay. We can't participate, but we're going to be the marketing agent. We can't be the co-developer, but we're going to be the property manager. We can't. So that's how they basically built up their portfolio. If you want to come into this area, you got to go to us, and we got to get something out of it. And that was brilliant. And another reason why so many emerging developers came out of New York City, like in the late 1990s, early 2000s, is under Dinkins and Giuliani, they started initiatives where the cities were guaranteeing the mortgages for it. So how can you replicate that nowadays? You have to have the goodwill to do it. Like the city of Buffalo is not going to step forward and say, we guarantee Ben Upshaw's construction land so that he can build a $30 million. It ain't happened. A lot of time when you get to a developer's origin story of like, how did you do it? A lot of time it's like atypical. It's an atypical event that happened with government that is hard to replicate. And you look at Don Peoples. So anybody that studied his life story is like under Marion Barry.
Yes.
The city leased a whole building from it. And they said, here is a lease. And this is what we're going to say. He took that lease and went to get financing. Like, that's hard to replicate. It speaks to the political economic condition. If you're well versed in that and you can see the opportunities, then I'm not going to say it's not impossible. It's still very difficult to do, but it's atypical. Even in our first real project, even though I mentioned knowing people, but it was under Cuomo when he was at HUD. And there was a big scandal going on with under the 203K program, which is the owner rehab program. So people were basically defrauding nonprofit organizations. There's a collection of appraisers, title people that were all in on it. They were over leveraged these buildings, let them go into foreclosure, let HUD deal with it. And then HUD had a big glut. This is, ironically, this is the same time that The Sopranos were on. They had that episode. I was like, that's us. We go through the exact same thing. So we got like 28 apartment buildings, and I'm just like, it's small, but we'll do it. And this, you never look a gift horse in the mouth. That project has been probably one of the most lucrative things that we've ever done. It's bailed us out of so many issues throughout my life. These 28 apartments that we did with HUD, and they cash flow so well. They still do. 20 years ago, they put my kids through college. That's how well they made me be able to be independent. And I never would have thought that.
Amen.
It's just, and that's why you have to look at the economics thing. It's never how big deals or small deals like that. Those 28 apartments have cash flow better than some of our 100-unit deals.
Wow.
Because the underwriting was insane. We got great deals for all that stuff.
It goes to show you people that it's not about the size of the deal. It's about the return of investment on the deal and your time as well and the efficiency. You have just dropped so many nuggets for us to, and tools that we can build on. I do like to say, in response to you, I am optimistic. Maybe it's the young eagerness and
you gotta be. That's what gets you out of bed. You gotta be.
The hunger for me is that I do believe that where we're at now, especially politically, is forcing us to really look at the mirror. It's causing people to stand for something and what they believe in. And if they believe in supporting developers of color, specifically Blacks and Latino developers, to help rebuild their communities, that those elected officials and those business partners and those community members are all going to be needed to work together to make that happen.
For sure.
We have tools and resources and media like this, the Better Living Interest Channel, that I could say you growing up, you didn't have that access and ability to pick up your phone, or you was in a train or in the library and learn, hearing it word for word from a developer that's doing it. So I think that there are a lot of more tools that we have access to. I do think that there's some big challenges with the sharks, these hedge funds, these conglomerates that are coming in. So I think that with all of those things, and hope God willing, I don't want to say mentorship because I'm changing my words and being more intentional. And I think that it's more investorship that we need as the younger generation from people like yourself, others, to say, hey, you have done it well. We're upcoming and we want to do our work too. How can we invest in one another? Instead of it being like a mentorship, it's a one. No, I want it to be a two-way street, not just transactional in the regards of financial, but also maybe socially, spiritually, mentally, that we could all build together, because it's about your legacy and what you're building for the next community to come even after you're no longer here. So I'm really grateful for that, and thank you. I do want to go into our last section, which is our rapid fire, and just give the people the quick rapid fire questions, and we just want your quick response off the top of your head. Okay. So this is the fun part. You ready?
We're ready.
All right. So what book is currently on your nightstand or that has influenced you deeply?
Unfortunately, I can't think of one book. I just read periodicals and I'm all over the place.
What podcast or something do you think that?
You know what? To me, I have 20 things that I read. I listen to the Nova Grata Tax Credit Tuesday podcast. I read HFA's public hearings. I read city planning documents. I read The Real Deal. I read the Commercial Observer. I read the New York Real Estate Journal. And if you notice, everything that I read is now in real time. If anything else is like inspirational or what's that? But this lets you know how a deal's being structured, what's the cost of said deal, how they're being financed, people that are leaving the market, people who are coming in the market. It's all real time stuff. I don't have a book per se.
Gotcha.
I'm a real time guy. You know, and that is periodic.
Every morning, get that first pop up on your phone.
Yeah.
Morning routines. What is one thing that you must do to start your day right?
Exercise. I'm a terrible. I just eat. I don't believe, but I exercise So I get up at 4 o'clock. I get up at 4 o'clock. I plan out my day. I'm in the gym at 5. I come back home around 6:30. So by 6:30, I have planned out the day. I'm usually starting to execute it in some way at 6:30, and I work until maybe 9,
Mm.
8 or 9, depending on what's going on. And it's not all straight week. You throw in some meals in there. You throw in walking the dog. But I'm even when I'm doing those side things, I'm on my phone. I'm reading while I'm walking. I'm listening to the podcast. Yeah, but my day is usually from 4 until about.
Long days and early mornings. I hear you. If you weren't in real estate, what would you be doing?
Notice. I was two things. Two things. Either when I say medical, either psychiatric medicine or sociology. That's where I was leaning in when I was very young. And the other thing is education. So I mentioned I was assistant director at HEOP. Oh, I fell into that because I needed a job. I fell into that and I almost stayed. So I started, oh, maybe I try to become a dean and just work at a college. So I almost stayed with that. But it'd probably be one of those.
And person living or historically that you love to have dinner with and why?
I could rattle off 5. I don't know if that's allowed, but obviously, for me, Jesus, I would love to. Jesus, after Jesus, actually King David. I had a lot of respect for King David. To me, it was interesting because he symbolized the good and bad in us all. He was a murderous, adulterous man, but God said he was a man after his own heart because all the other things he did. So Jesus, King David, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. People are not going to, after mentioning all of those people, the other person is out of left field, but I just admired him. So, well, a couple of people. Muhammad Ali, throw him in there. And also Prince. I'm an avid Prince fan. And his life story, if those that are real fans know his backstory and his life story and some of the things that he with, he'd be one of the people that I would love to talk to. But those are like the big ones, especially Muhammad Ali. A friend of mine grew up with Muhammad Ali.
Okay.
And I want to end. I don't know if you're ready to end it, but no, I'll end this question. So he would be walking his little sister to school. And in the process of walking to the school, Muhammad Ali would train. And he said, we were terrified. I was like, why? He said, because every morning he would be shadow boxed and he would be screaming and you could hear him talking. He said back then, when he was in his 20s, run around training, do all this, I am the great. I cannot possibly be beat. And he said, can you imagine a man saying that thousands of times a day during his training set? And what is Muhammad Ali known as? The greatest possibly be beat. And he said, it just the power of what we think of ourselves, the repetition of that, and the ability to create your own world through that constant reinforcement and belief in self. And that's what we as a Black people need. We have to, nobody believes in you until you. And his belief, and even my friend, his name is Clifford Turner. Clifford Turner is the former president of NARAB. So he was a president of NARAB when I was running with Cliff. That goes back into 05. Grew up with Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
And that he instilled that kind of thing in Cliff. Not just, can you imagine just being in the neighborhood and seeing somebody like Michael Jordan, like Muhammad Ali every day. And the thing about Ali for our generation, which is a totally different thing, because you were not in the, and technically I wasn't either. When I was born, he was on the downside of his planet. But
he's still an iconic figure.
He's such an iconic figure,
especially throughout the world, American
political, social, economic.
Yes.
And being in some of the greatest, most memorable fights. When you fight somebody 7 years younger, you go into these lands that are basically dominated by dictators and you're fighting in 100-degree heat near death. And you beat Joe Frazier in the Thriller in Manila, which is one of the greatest fights ever seen. And both men collapse in the middle of the ring. It's just all the sports stuff. But when you stop and you throw in the fact that the Viet Cong never called me nigger. I'm not going to go fight for. He said, put me in jail. I said, what? Take my money. What? Take my boxing crown. I was like, but you're not going to take my man. You don't tell me what. That's why I respect my. That's why people like I was born in '70. Like I said, he was actually on the downside of his career when I really got into my own. But for anybody to have the gumptions and to live it out and be a black man in America, and at a time you might even get away with it. You can get away with it better now than back then. This is you were a boy. This is you're an alien. You can't say that back then. You were scared to death of what would happen to you and your. And he did. And I think that's why he's placed on a different level. Because like you have the athletics, you have the thriller in the level, you have a rumble in the jungle, you have elevating your sport, you have all of that. But he beat the best of the best. But he was remembered for being a man's man and not succumbing to some of the things that a lot of the people we take for granted. What the Michael Jordan said, Republicans buy shoes too. Okay, that's fine. And I'm not judging, but I just respect somebody that has a backbone more than somebody that just want $1.
That's true.
Just $1. Ain't nothing wrong with that, but I just respect this man because he has a backbone. And his backbone's different than yours.
Yeah, especially when you're doing all of that work, you build such a career, and it's I'm willing to stand on something
Yeah.
and could potentially lose it all, but because of
And
my
did.
belief, I could do that.
That bad. He lost it all. He lost it all and got it back. That's why he's
Yeah.
and that's why he's a hero. Like when people are like, we're gonna show you you can't make a living. They purposely not let that man make a living for 3. And the strain that they put on his marriage and his children, and you can't box overseas. That kind of thing. What if I got a problem with America? I'll just go in London. No. If they we're gonna blackball you. You can't fight in London. You can't fight in Europe. You can't fight nowhere. And that's what you do. Go out and get a job. Yeah, that's why I think people respect him differently.
That relates, and I can see the inspiration pour out into your work in real estate development. And because this is an easy work, people.
It's many a day, and I was like, man, I should just be working at a bank. Work at a bank, get a check and go home. It's not.
And speaking of that, my last 5th question of this segment is a quick tip you give someone who wants to start building impact with small resources.
The biggest tip that I can give someone is partnership. The thing that you have to be cognizant of and careful of is who you partner with. So I would never be a developer if I didn't first partner with my partner, which is Richard Brown. And then we partner with other people. It's impossible nowadays to be a developer without having multiple partners. If I put on all 40 deals, the deals where it's just my partner, Chris, and I, probably 3 out of 4. Everything else, nonprofit partner, for-profit, somebody brought us a deal, 2 or 3 different partners. Partnership, especially when you don't have resources, is critical because you won't go anywhere. And even when you become successful, you still need to partner. So that'd be number 1. Number 2 is pick your partner carefully. And what people really don't realize, and they don't take it seriously enough, is that a partnership is a marriage. Marriages and partners can accelerate you in either the right direction or wrong direction very quickly. So if you have, just imagine if Corona Scott King, you're not marching, you're not going, and you're going to make your life hell. She's supporting him. So he was able to accelerate in one direction. And if she did support him, he would decelerate in the other direction. And then in that partnership, not only is that important to have the right partner accelerate you in the right direction, the other thing is it has to be a complement. I've seen a lot of brown and black developers get together and they're of the same ilk, meaning that both are finance guys, both are construction guys, but they end up arguing over this. I was like, you don't complement each other. So I'm a finance guy. My partner is a property management guy. He opines on finance. I opine on property management, but that's his thing. And we complement each other to accelerate the process. I think there are 2 guys that are finance guys that I know that are killing it. But most of the time you need to have, there are 4 or 5 different disciplines in real estate. You need to have someone, if you're a partner, have 2 or 3 people that are masters of maybe 1 or 2 of those disciplines. At one time I was going to have a partnership with a GC. Okay, you do the construction, I'm going to do the finance. We'll work together on property management. We'll work together on dealing with the architect. So that's the thing, is you have to have a complement, accelerator complement and be willing to have an external partnership. Beyond your immediate partner, you might have to have a partnership with the organization. And the other thing is that when you are selecting those exterior, I call them exterior partnerships outside of your immediate partnership, look to people that are national in scope. So what does that mean is I do a deal with you in New York City, but you're national. So if I see something in Atlanta, I could still call you and you have an Atlanta office, right? So it's an extension of a positive relationship that happened in New York. So when we partner now, we try not to partner as much with local people. But if you can't do that, a better solution would be to partner with a national person. You have a national organization that is already in the area and you partner with them. That opens up stuff for Atlanta. The Mid-Atlantic gets East, West, opens up.
Oh,
Yeah.
I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing your journey,
You're welcome.
insights, your vision with us. It's inspiring to see how one person like yourself can build scalable impact while also staying rooted in the mission of helping the people you from the community, building up the community. To our viewers out there, if you find the value here, please don't forget to comment and subscribe. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscription for more content like this. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss future interviews where we're deep diving and getting inspiration for better living and investing. If you had access to just one resource or time, capital, community, or knowledge, how would you invest it and leave a legacy that matters in your neighborhood or your city? Is my question for you guys for this video. Drop your answers in the comments below. I'd love to read your thinking and maybe feature sometime the responses in future episodes. How can people get in contact with you and reach out, whether it be for deals, whether it's to see your work?
That's probably the best one.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is the best
You
one.
have a website for your company as
We have a
well?
website, which is cbemmanuelrealty.com. And
There
you'll
you have
see everything that we're working on on that website.
And previous projects as well, correct? Look, and you can get it in straight from the source right here. So I appreciate you. Until next time, thank you again. Keep building better, keep dreaming, and keep living with a purpose. Thank you. Peace.